Hey everyone, on this episode of Coding with Kate, we are going to be talking about anatomy and physiology, specifically the heart. It's going to be so much fun because I love talking about the conductivity of the heart, so essentially the electrical impulses or the action potential that allows the heart to beat, because it's really, really cool. So today I'm going to do a very brief overview of the structure of the heart and then jump right into how the heart actually beats and some really, really, really cool information on that, because then we can start to understand the different diagnoses that come up that talk with the cardiovascular system and specifically the heart. And that's what a lot of these A&P videos are going to be about. Physiological processes that will help us understand diagnoses, because sometimes we need to understand the root causes of some diseases, illnesses, etc., and having a physiological understanding of those body systems, body parts, we can understand the diagnosis codes and the sequencing, etc. But today, talking about the heart, it's going to be so much fun. Okay, so to talk about the anatomy of the heart, we're just going to talk about the larger components of it. We're not going to go too in depth on all the different bits and parts of the heart. So on our lovely hand-drawn heart here, we have in blue, the vena cava. In red here, that's our aorta. Here we have our right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. In green, that is our SA node. In blue, our AV node. We'll be talking more about those. And then in blue, this is our bundle branch, and then it branches off into two bundle branches down into the Purkinje fibers that come up all along the ventricle. So those are the components that I'm going to be focusing on today and how they all work. It's going to be so much fun. So the heart has its own types of cells, cardiac muscle cells, or cardiomyocytes. It's a type of myocyte or heart cell. These cardiomyocytes are amazing. They are only found within the heart, and they essentially create their own beat, their own rhythm, without any external stimuli to cause them to beat. I found an awesome video, and also I took a tour of the research lab at the hospital I work at, and I got to see in real life these cells in a petri dish beating. It is amazing. So I will have a link in the description to that YouTube video of cardiomyocytes in a petri dish and them beating. It's amazing. So with cardiomyocytes, essentially the way they beat or how they beat is an action potential. Very similar, almost identical to the same action potential found in neurons, which is what we talked about in our previous A&P video. I'll have a link in the description. The physiological aspect of how that action potential functions is the same as in neurons and cardiomyocytes. So with cardiomyocytes, they have their sodium ion channels, but they're overall leaky, so they're bringing in on a very constant basis sodium in. It reaches the threshold where an action potential is triggered. And because of that, that is how we get that continuous, repetitive rhythm that creates the beat, the heartbeat, which is amazing that they just know how to do that all on their own. Also, if you're in an A&P classes, you'll also know when you talk about embryos and all of that. I can't remember the exact week of gestation that those cardiomyocytes start beating on their own in the fetus, essentially. I don't remember, and I know the term isn't fetus because it's earlier than that. It's awesome. So, with cardiomyocytes and their beating, what's really cool is we essentially have pacemaker cells, which are cardiomyocytes, but when we look at the heart, it's actually the SA node that starts everything off, that starts a full beat of the heart. And we will go into our diagram and I'll go through that process of how that works. So in our heart here, we have our SA node, or sinoatrial node, SA node. So it is near the very top of the right atrium. And this SA node is amazing because it knows when to start an action potential on its own, which starts the heartbeat. So we have those leaky sodium ion channels. They're bringing in sodium at a very leaky continuous pace. An action potential is triggered and it sends out that action potential along the myocardium of the atrium. I should say atria, because it goes to the right and the left. This only happens because what is called gap junctions. It is basically a tunnel between each cell, so an action potential can move from cell to cell very quickly. So you have this action potential moving along the myocardium. It is depolarizing the myocardium and causing a contraction of the atria. Now, as it is depolarizing the myocardium, it's going to hit and activate the AV node, the atrial ventricular node, AV node. This AV node triggers the action potential and it moves down in between both ventricles. This space here, that is insulated, so there are no gap junctions to the ventricles yet, because we don't want the ventricles to start a contraction near the top or the middle. That would then be pushing the blood supply down where there's no way out. So this whole section is insulated and it moves down these bundle branches. It branches off until we get down to the very bottom of the heart, where it goes into Purkinje fibers. These Purkinje fibers snake up along the ventricles, where then it is now uninsulated and it can depolarize the ventricles of the heart. As it is depolarizing, we are going to have that contraction of the ventricles from the bottom up, meaning it is going to push the blood supply up and out of the heart. And that is how we get our heartbeat. And you will also know that in certain cardiac diseases, illnesses, etc., sometimes the SA node doesn't fire, or it fires irregularly, or the AV node doesn't fire, or it fires irregularly, and sometimes it just fires on its own, and that is when we get those irregular heartbeats, and then you can go into cardiac arrest, atrial fibrillation, etc. And it is because these SA and AV nodes aren't working properly, and that is when they use, in some cases, types of pacemakers to help with maintaining a proper heartbeat. So now that we know the anatomy of the heart and how the heart beats via the SA and AV node, we have to know how doctors in general know what's going on with the heart if there is an irregular heartbeat or other symptoms that suggest it is because something within the heart is not working. So the way they do that is they use different types of EKGs or ECGs, electrocardiogram. These are diagrams that are very tricky to read. You have to be highly trained on how to read them and know what all of the peaks and valleys mean. And it is fascinating, especially being in medical records at the hospital I work at. Every day I'm in there, I come across 20 or 30 different diagnostic cardiology records, and it is so fascinating to read the notes from the cardiologist and seeing all these different patterns. So let's look at a very generalized EKG so we can understand kind of the components of it and how to read it. So this is what an EKG would look like. We have all these different peaks and valleys. So this first bump, or peak, is the P wave. Now the P wave is the atria depolarizing. So this, when the atria depolarizes, or when that SA node fires and depolarizes the myocardium of the atria, this is what it will look like, essentially, on an EKG. And then we have our Q, R, S waves. We can also call that a segment. So the QRS segment or QRS wave, these show the depolarization of the ventricles. And at this point, this is also when the atria are repolarizing. They are getting ready for the next contraction. And then we finally have our T wave. And the T wave is the ventricle repolarizing. So this is essentially the breakdown of a very generalized EKG. It is very fun to look at, but very, very hard to read when you are looking at the variations of all of these. So I would suggest, to understand more about EKGs and all the different types, going online, looking under diagnostic cardiology, telemetry, rhythm strips, EKG or ECG, and you will see different samples. You can also look for arrhythmia, all of the other terms that might be used to describe different types of disorders or irregular heartbeats, so you can see how they differ, and it is very fascinating to look at. And especially if you see some of the EKGs that actually have the cardiologist notes where it says left bundle branch block or delayed atrial repolarization, etc. You'll be able to hopefully pinpoint where on the EKG that is, and you can also infer what sorts of symptoms manifest because of that. And that is another thing that we are going to be doing in these A&P videos, continually going back and remembering what is happening in these A&P videos in the body part body system and how that is affecting other body parts and causing different diagnoses, so we can understand how they're connected, how they affect each other, etc. Because especially with the heartbeat, then you can get into issues with the respiratory system or the muscles within the body, etc. Because if the heart is not beating correctly, the incorrect amount of blood supply is getting to the rest of the body, and you also have issues with oxygen and carbon dioxide within the body, and it is fascinating. So I can't wait to do more and make connections to this video so we can see how they affect each other and the different manifestations of symptoms that happen within the body, and connect them to the diagnoses we'll be talking about in our ICD-10-CM videos. So if you would like more A&P videos or videos on ICD-10-CM, ICD-10-PCS, or CPT, subscribe to this channel so you get notifications on when I have those new videos, so you are always in the know. You can post comments below if you enjoyed this very, very generalized description of the heart and how the heart works as far as SA and AV nodes go. You can also comment if you learned more information or other interesting facts about the heart that I did not cover. I would love to hear them. And like this video if you enjoyed it and you want more A&P videos. I love the feedback. And I will see y'all later. Bye!